In 1897, three men climbed into a basket hanging beneath a hydrogen balloon and floated north into the Arctic sky. They were attempting something no human had ever done: reach the North Pole by air. They were never seen again. 33 years later, a team of Norwegian scientists landed on a remote Arctic island for an unrelated survey. What they found stopped them cold. A camp, untouched, frozen exactly as it had been left, and photographs. An entire roll of film, still developable after more than 3 decades, buried in ice and snow. The photos showed three men, smiling, confident, alive. What happened between that last photograph and their deaths is one of the Arctic's most haunting mysteries. The year is 1897. The race to the North Pole is one of the most obsessive quests in human history. Nations are pouring money and men into Arctic expeditions. Most fail. Many die. The pole remains unconquered. Into this atmosphere steps Salomon August Andrée, a Swedish engineer, a rationalist, a man who believed science and technology could solve any problem, including the Arctic. His plan was audacious. Instead of trudging across the ice like everyone else, he would fly over it. A hydrogen balloon, large enough to carry 3 men and enough supplies for 4 months, would simply drift northward over the pole and land safely on the other side. It was the kind of idea that sounded brilliant on paper. Andrée had 2 companions: Niels Strindberg, 24 years old, a physicist and photographer, engaged to be married, and Knut Frankel, 27, a civil engineer, the physically strongest of the 3. On July 11, 1897, the balloon, named the Eagle, lifted off from Danes Island, Svalbard, in front of a crowd of journalists and well-wishers. Within 2 minutes, it had disappeared into the clouds. No one on the ground would ever see them alive again. What followed was silence, complete, total silence. For 33 years, no distress signal, no wreckage, no bodies. Search parties found nothing. The Arctic, as it had done so many times before, simply swallowed them. And then, in August 1930, a Norwegian scientific expedition landed on White Island, a remote, barely visited island in the Arctic Ocean, to conduct geological surveys. It wasn't a search mission. They weren't looking for anything specific. One of the team members walked away from camp to explore. He almost tripped over something half buried in the snow. A boat, then a sledge, then equipment, perfectly preserved by the Arctic cold. Then a canvas boat cover with the initials SAA, Salomon August Andrée. They had found the camp. Then they found the bodies of all 3 men. Then they found something nobody expected: Andrée's camera, and inside it, exposed film. 33-year-old film, frozen, buried, soaked by meltwater at some point, and refrozen again. Against all logic, the film was developed, and it worked. The photographs that emerged showed the 3 men very much alive, hauling equipment across the ice, standing proudly next to the deflated balloon, smiling at the camera. Strindberg had photographed everything methodically, right up until the end. The last photograph is dated October 1897, 3 months after takeoff. The diaries were also recovered, Andrée's and Strindberg's both. They told a story very different from the triumphant polar conquest they had imagined. The balloon had come down after just 65 hours in the air. Ice had formed on the envelope, weighing it down. The drag ropes, supposed to help steer, had detached almost immediately after takeoff. They had drifted not north toward the pole, but east, then northeast, completely at the mercy of the wind. They crash-landed on the sea ice roughly 475 miles from where they started, still hundreds of miles from the pole. What followed was an extraordinary 3-month struggle for survival. They hauled their equipment across drifting, shifting ice, nearly 300 miles on foot, navigating toward land. They hunted polar bears for food. They built shelters. They kept writing in their diaries. They reached White Island on October 5th, 1897. And then the diary stopped. The last entry is routine. Camp notes, weather observations, nothing dramatic. No sign of panic, no indication anything was wrong. All 3 men were dead within days of arriving on solid ground for the first time. And here's what makes this case haunting even today. Nobody knows exactly why. The leading theory for decades was exposure. They simply froze. But their camp was reasonably well set up. They had supplies. They had survived 3 brutal months on the ice. Why would they die within days of reaching land? A later analysis suggested trichinosis, a parasite found in undercooked polar bear meat, which they had been eating for weeks. Symptoms include severe muscle pain, fever, and weakness. It would explain the sudden collapse with no dramatic warning in the diary. But this too is disputed. Other researchers point to carbon monoxide poisoning from their stove, used inside an enclosed shelter. Others suggest lead poisoning from their canned food supply. The truth is, we don't know. 3 men survived conditions that would kill most people today, reached land, set up camp, and quietly died, leaving behind only photographs, diaries, and questions. Strindberg had been writing letters to his fiancée throughout the expedition, intending to send them when they returned. They were found with his body, unsent. She received them 33 years after he wrote them. 3 men, a hydrogen balloon, an Arctic island nobody visits. 33 years of silence, broken by photographs that should never have survived. The Eagle lifted off on July 11, 1897. It landed 65 hours later, 475 miles off course, on an ice floe in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. They walked for 3 months. They almost made it. Almost. If you want more stories like this, the expeditions that didn't come back, the questions history never answered, subscribe to No Trace. A new story drops every week.